Welcome back to Kubernetes Crashcasts. I'm Sheila, and I'm here with Victor to dive deeper into the world of Kubernetes. Before we begin, if you're enjoying our podcast, please take a moment to rate us on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us.
That's right, Sheila. And today we're continuing our journey through the Kubernetes core concept season. We're in the chapter about pods, and we'll be focusing on creating pods. Last time, we covered what pods are, and now we're going to learn how to bring them to life.
Exciting stuff, Victor. But before we jump in, I have a quiz question for our listeners. Here it is. What are the 3 main methods for creating a pod in Kubernetes? Take a moment to think about it, and we'll reveal the answer at the end of the episode.
That's a great question, Sheila. It really gets to the heart of what we'll be discussing today. Without giving away the answer, I think our listeners will find it interesting how Kubernetes provides different approaches to suit various needs and workflows.
Absolutely. Now let's start with the basics. Victor, could you explain what we mean when we talk about creating a pod?
Certainly. Creating a pod in Kubernetes is like writing and submitting a recipe to a kitchen. You're essentially providing instructions to the Kubernetes cluster about what containers should run, how they should be configured, and what resources they need. The cluster then takes those instructions and brings the pod to life.
That's a helpful analogy. So if creating a pod is like submitting a recipe, what are the ingredients we need to include?
Great question. The main ingredients for a pod recipe, or manifest as we call it in Kubernetes, include: Point 1. The API version and kind of resource, which is pod in this case. Point 2. Metadata, like the pod's name and labels. 3. The spec, which describes the desired state of the pod, including the containers to run, the images for those containers, any environment variables or volume mounts, resource requirements.
That's quite a list. It sounds like there's a lot to consider when creating a pod. How do we actually write these manifests?
Most commonly, we write pod manifests in a format called YAML. It's a way to structure information that's easy for both humans and computers to read. Imagine it like a very organized shopping list. At the top, we specify what kind of list it is and give it a name. Then we list out all the items we need, grouped by category.
That doesn't sound too complicated. But I'm curious, is writing these YAML manifests the only way to create pods?
Not at all. While YAML is common, there are other methods. For example, you can use a simple command line instruction to quickly create a pod. It's great for testing or simple use cases. You'd simply type a command that says, "Create a pod with this name using this specific container image." It's like using a vending machine instead of writing out a full recipe.
That seems much quicker. But I can see how the YAML file might be more useful for complex configurations. Are there any best practices we should keep in mind when creating pods?
Absolutely. Here are a few key best practices. 1. Always specify resource requests and limits to ensure proper scheduling and prevent resource contention. 2. Use labels to organize and select your pods effectively. 3. Don't create pods directly in production environments. Instead, use higher-level abstractions like deployments. 4. Keep your pod definitions in version control for easy management and rollback.
Those are great tips, Victor. I'm particularly intrigued by the third point. Why shouldn't we create pods directly in production?
That's an excellent question, Sheila. While you can create pods directly in production environments, it's generally better to use controllers like deployments or stateful sets. These higher-level abstractions manage pods for you, providing benefits like easy scaling, rolling updates, and self-healing capabilities. If a pod fails, a deployment will automatically create a new one to replace it.
I see. So it's about adding an extra layer of management and reliability. Now, I'm wondering about the life cycle of a pod during creation. What happens after we submit our recipe to Kubernetes?
Great point. When you create a pod, it goes through several phases. Point 1. Pending. The pod has been accepted by the cluster but isn't running yet. This could be because the scheduler is finding a node to place the pod, or because the container images are still downloading. 2. Running. The pod has been bound to a node, and all containers have been created. 3. Succeeded or failed. The pod has completed its execution for short-lived tasks or encountered an error. During this process, Kubernetes is working behind the scenes to schedule the pod, pull necessary images, and start the containers.
That's fascinating. It really shows how much is happening under the hood. Now, I think it's time to reveal the answer to our quiz question. Victor, would you like to do the honors?
Certainly. The question was, what are the 3 main methods for creating a pod in Kubernetes? And the answer is, Antoine, writing and applying a YAML manifest. Point 2, using the command line to quickly create a pod. Point 3, using the Kubernetes API programmatically. Each method has its use cases, from detailed configurations to quick tests to automated deployments.
Thank you, Victor. To summarize what we've learned today, we can create pods using YAML manifests, command line instructions, or the Kubernetes API. Pod manifests include API version, kind, metadata, and spec. Best practices include specifying resource limits, using labels, and leveraging higher-level abstractions in production. Pods go through several lifecycle phases during creation. While direct pod creation is possible, it's often better to use controllers like deployments in production environments. Did I miss anything important, Victor?
That's an excellent summary, Sheila. You've covered all the key points. I think our listeners now have a solid understanding of how to create pods in Kubernetes.
Great. And to our listeners, if you found this episode helpful, please visit crashcasts.com and consider joining our Discord community. Your support on Patreon helps us keep producing high-quality content. Don't forget to subscribe and rate our podcast. Until next time, happy Kuberneting.